The body paragraphs of your persuasive speech represent the 3 reasons that back up your main argument, your thesis. It's these 3 reasons that make your text a persuasive one. You gotta know how to nail them if you want to get a good mark for your response. And showing you how to nail your reasons is exactly what this lesson does.
Everything you need to easily pass English ATAR. English ATAR made simple. Powered by Saints Coaching.
The juicy stuff. This lesson is a natural progression from the last 3 on structure, planning, and introductions. Make sure you have watched those lessons and completed the related activities before continuing with this lesson. The first lesson in this module, titled Intro to Module 5, is also compulsory pre-watching before this one as well. Lesson objectives. Recap the structure of the body paragraphs, aka the tube. Then we'll recap example number 1 from the previous lessons. Then we'll get into what we came here for. We'll analyze BP1, which is reason 1, and its theme is logos. The same thing with body paragraph 2. Body paragraph 3 is all about the counter argument and the reason 3. The theme of that one is pathos. Then we'll call it a day with a simple summary. The structure of the body paragraphs, aka the tube. Recap. Here's our tube. Here are our elements of the tube. We should be feeling pretty familiar with most of these elements by now. The topic sentence is up first. The topic sentence outlines the first or second reason why the audience should agree with your overarching argument. Next up, we've got the elaboration. The elaboration provides some additional detail about something mentioned in the topic sentence, or it states some information that you didn't get to include in the topic sentence because doing so would have made it too wordy, too lengthy. From there, we have the example. The example refers to an example or rhetorical device that backs up your topic sentence. Then we have the explain. The explain explains the significance of the example and how that significance is relevant to the topic sentence. Second last element of this paragraph is the link. The link summarizes the body paragraph's contents and links it to your thesis. Here it is. Go away. Last element of this body paragraph is the transition sentence. This element segues to the next paragraph by hinting at what it's about. As mentioned earlier, the theme of this first body paragraph is logos. Logos is the category of rhetoric that involves the speaker appealing to the audience's sense of logic and reason. As far as body paragraph 2 goes, it's basically a repetition of all those elements that come in body paragraph 1. Logos is the theme, same as body paragraph 1, and obviously this second body paragraph focuses on reason number 2. From there, we go to the third and final body paragraph. The first element of it is the topic sentence. This topic sentence in BP3 outlines a significant counter-argument or doubt the audience may have regarding your thesis. Then we move to the elaboration. This elaborates on the merit or merits of the counter-argument you've outlined in the topic sentence. After that, we have the rebut. The rebut serves 2 purposes. Firstly, it outlines why the counter-argument is flawed or misguided. Secondly, it introduces reason number 3. Next element is the example. This is where you refer to an example or rhetorical device that backs up your rebuttal. Second last element of this third body paragraph is the explain. Like the other 2 explains, this explains the significance of the example and why that's relevant to the topic sentence. Explain. Lucky last element is our link. This summarizes the body paragraph's contents and links it to your thesis. As you might recall, the theme of the third and final body paragraph is pathos. This is the category of rhetoric that involves the speaker appealing to the values or emotions of the audience. Just a reminder, I suggest you stick to this structure of a persuasive speech and write 3 body paragraphs instead of 4, like you would aim to do for the body paragraphs of your responding section response. So that is an overview of the structure of the body paragraphs that we'll be taking a closer look at in this lesson. Before we turn to our first sample body paragraph, let's figure out how we're going to remember all the elements in these paragraphs. The structure of the first 2 body paragraphs is the same. They have the same elements, so we can use the one mnemonic for them. These first 2 body paragraphs have topic sentence, elaboration, example, explain, link, and transition, or TEELT. as their elements. TEELT is a bit of a messy acronym to remember, so we'll use this mnemonic instead. Together, everyone enjoyed edible lolly toys. That's how we can remember the elements for the first 2 body paragraphs. Now let's check out our mnemonic for the 3rd body paragraph. We know by this stage that this body paragraph is structured a little differently to the first 2, so because it has different elements, we're using a different acronym. The structure is different for this 3rd and final body paragraph because a good persuasive text requires you to acknowledge counterarguments. So that is really the focus of this 3rd body paragraph, as well as outlining your 3rd reason that backs up your thesis. To remind you of the real importance of the counterargument, you might recall from the lesson on structure the following example. For example, assume I write a persuasive speech that argues that English is the best subject ever. I present my first 2 reasons in my first 2 body paragraphs, 1 in each. Then, at the beginning of my 3rd and final body paragraph, I acknowledge the following counterargument. English is subjective and there's no right way to do it. It sucks. Then I rebut that counterargument by raising my own 3rd reason as to why English is the best subject. And that 3rd reason is that there's this course called English ATAR Made Simple, and it actually just makes English objective and shows the right way to do it. Oh, very funny. Anyway, you might wonder why acknowledging a counterargument is important in a persuasive text. The plain and simple reason is that acknowledging a counterargument makes you come across as fair and less biased. In turn, that ultimately makes it more likely that the audience will agree with what you're saying. Put another way, if you don't acknowledge any sort of flaw in your argument, the audience can't help but think that what you're saying is too good to be true or you're hiding something. So that's why we have a counterargument. These are our elements that we'll use to write a great counterargument paragraph. And here is our mnemonic that we'll use to remember these elements. The ebooks rating enjoyed, everyone's love. That is the structure of the 3 body paragraphs recapped. Here's another recap, albeit a very brief one, of what we've already established regarding example number 1. Our question: I don't think you quite understand the ramifications of this decision. Incorporate this statement into a persuasive text for a resistant audience. Quick recap of step 5 of the planning steps. We've done this recap already, but this time we're recapping this step with a different focus. Pause the video now and have a read of everything except the part that relates to the conclusion. As we start our analysis, I'd like you to see how that info that you just read appears in the following body paragraphs. Before we look at body paragraph 1, here's the original version of the title and introduction for example 1 that we looked at in the previous lesson. If it's been more than 3 days since you read this introduction, pause the video now and reread it just to refamiliarize yourself with what I'm saying in this speech, and I'll see you when you're back. Alrighty, recap stuff out of the way, let's take a look at body paragraph 1. Here's the original version, here is our deconstructed version, starting with the topic sentence. If you ignore everything I say today and fail to introduce digital boundaries, your attention span will gradually decrease. Now we've got the elaboration. Over time, you'll struggle to focus during uni lectures, listening to your boss's instructions, or even watching a movie. Just to make sure we're all on the same page before continuing, can anyone tell me what this term attention span actually means? A student named Jack raises his hand and provides an answer. Yes, thank you, Jack. I couldn't have said it better myself. The term attention span simply refers to the time you can focus on a given task before your mind wanders to something else. Here is our example. Interestingly, Dr. Andrina Uberman, a professor of neurobiology at Stanford University, says that most of us have an attention span of about 3 minutes. In other words, most of us can focus on a given task for about 3 minutes before we get distracted. However, and this is the real kicker, Dr. Uberman estimates that after 5 years of social media use for 2 hours per day, that attention span of 3 minutes will decline to 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Moving on to the explain. Imagine having a deadline at university or work and getting distracted 6 times every minute. You might be wondering, how on earth could it decline so much? Well, the average length of time someone spends looking at a single TikTok is 1.2 seconds. After watching thousands of TikToks, you're essentially telling your mind that it only needs to concentrate for 1.2 seconds on a given thing. Turning to our link. So, in other words, every time you find yourself in a scroll hole, you're ever so slightly reducing your attention span, and that is precisely why we need digital boundaries in our life. Finally, the transition. Another reason relates to time. That's BP1. Here are some comments. Here's our topic sentence. It highlights the first reason why the audience should introduce digital boundaries in their lives. That first reason is your attention span will gradually decrease. The topic sentence also uses polarization, which is if you do X, Y will happen. I'm saying in this topic sentence, if you ignore me, your attention span will decrease. Finally, this topic sentence engages the audience by highlighting something that's relevant to them, their attention spans. That's our topic sentence. Here's the elaboration. This elaboration elaborates on the practical consequences of a decreased attention span. Put differently, it outlines the impacts of a reduced attention span on situations in which the audience is likely to find themselves in, such as being in lectures, listening to their boss, or watching a movie. Also note in this elaboration that I ask the audience a question. Can anyone tell me what this term attention span actually means? This is adhering to one of the main conventions of a speech, which is to engage them by asking them a question. Recall the reason 1 that I outline in my topic sentence says that the audience should establish digital boundaries or they will experience a reduced attention span. This final sentence of my elaboration defines what an attention span actually is. It elaborates on a key term mentioned in the topic sentence. If the audience didn't know what the term attention span really meant, this entire body paragraph would fall flat because the audience doesn't know what a key thing relating to it means. So that is the elaboration. This is the example. This example uses the rhetorical device of an expert opinion. Dr. Andrina Uberman is, as far as I'm aware, a made-up person. However, she is based on a real person called Andrew Huberman, who is actually a professor of neurobiology at Stanford University as well, and Huberman is of Huberman Lab fame. Great podcast, highly recommend. What makes an opinion an expert opinion? In this example, I would say it's 3 things. Firstly, the title of a doctor implies that someone is very knowledgeable in this given field. Secondly, we have the occupation of being a professor of neurobiology. And thirdly, we have the fact that Dr. Andrina is a professor at Stanford University, which is a prestigious Ivy League college. If this example just read, interestingly, Andrina Uberman says that most of us have, and so on and so forth, this opinion would not be an expert opinion. It would just be an opinion because we don't know what makes this person qualified to comment on the topic. Some of the opinions expressed by Dr. Uberman are accurate. I know for a fact that most of us have an attention span of about 3 minutes. However, the other opinions, such as this one regarding the estimate of 5 years of social media use for 2 hours per day, they're made up. However, the key is that these made up opinions could be accurate. You probably didn't think twice as I read that fact out. Yeah, it's shocking, but it's also pretty believable. And that is exactly the point. If it's believable, it's persuasive. Don't go crazy on making up these unbelievable facts when more believable ones will be more persuasive to your audience. Turning to the explain. This explain explains the relevance of the example to the audience. Although the audience is technically you, high school students, it's almost guaranteed that you'll go to uni or work at some point in your life. So because that is something that the audience is highly likely to do, it relates to them, it's relevant. This part also explains how our attention spans could be reduced so dramatically. And that is by training our minds that it only needs to concentrate on something for such a short period. Next up, we've got the link. This link reiterates one of the main reasons why the audience should implement and establish digital boundaries, and that is because if they don't, their attention span will reduce. Notice how I also reiterate what my thesis statement is in this last part of the link. Then we have our final element of this paragraph, the transition. There's nothing fancy about this transition. It uses short syntax, which is nice to use when you want to communicate something clearly. This transition is also vague enough that it makes the audience wonder, what is it about time? This transition opens up the concept of time and implies that I will refer to it in the following body paragraph. It is a classic example of a sentence that transitions from one paragraph to the next for the purpose of a persuasive speech. Body paragraph 1 done. Let's go to body paragraph number 2. Basically the exact same as the body paragraph that we just analyzed in terms of the elements it contains and its overarching theme, which is logos. Yeah, this is a chunky one. That's why we have a review lesson. Deconstructed version, here's the topic sentence. We need digital boundaries so we can reclaim lost time spent on social media. Turning to the elaboration. Time is the single most valuable resource known to humanity. Why? Because no amount of money can buy more time. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that all time spent on social media is lost time. I myself have an account for just about every social media platform you can think of, except for OnlyFans, and I go on them just about every day. The point I'm really getting at here is intentionality. What does this mean? Intentionality simply refers to being deliberate, purposive, or intentional, and I suggest that's how we all should be when it comes to social media use. In practice, intentional social media use can take a bunch of forms. It might involve creating a rule for yourself where you can only check socials at certain times of the day, or it might involve creating screen time limits on your phone that prevent you from using certain apps once you've spent a given amount of time on them. That's our elaboration. This is a big example. With that being said, I'd like you all to take the next minute to pull out your phones, go into settings, and determine what your average screen time is on social media apps. 1 minute later. Okay, has everyone got their number? Good. Now I'd like you all to close your eyes and raise your right hand. I'm going to say some numbers. For instance, if I say 1, that refers to an average daily screen time on social media apps of 1 hour. If everyone has an average of 1 or more, everyone will keep their hand up. If, however, the number I say is higher than your average daily screen time, you will lower your hand. So, does everybody understand? Runs through the aforementioned activity over the next 2 or so minutes. Thank you so much for participating. You can open your eyes. We can observe the following from our little experiment. Approximately 5% of you spend less than 2 hours on your phone each day. 20% spend less than 3 hours, 50% spend less than 4 hours, and 25% spend less than 5 hours. And those results are actually pretty on point when compared to the findings of Lime magazine, which show that adolescents aged between 16 to 19 spend on average 3 hours and 48 minutes on social media daily. Turning to the explain. So what's the point of all these numbers? Well, if we take Lime magazine's findings, 3 hours and 45 minutes per day equate to 83,220 minutes on your phone each year, or 1,387 hours. I'm guessing that number is a bit higher than some of you expected. By being intentional with our social media use, we can pretty easily reduce that number to around 2 hours per day. I think that's a pretty reasonable number, don't you? Moving to the link. By doing this, you'll be freeing up around 100 minutes every single day to do other stuff that's important to you. Here is our transition. The last thing I'd like to address before wrapping up is something I reckon many of you have been thinking about over the past 10 minutes. Turning to some comments of that deconstructed body paragraph. Firstly, it's too long. As I hinted at earlier, we'll come back to this body paragraph in the review lesson at the end of this module. Okay, that's what I can say generally about that body paragraph. Specifically, here's the topic sentence. It reiterates the thesis, which is that we should use digital boundaries, and states the second reason why we need to do that, why we should use digital boundaries. Looking at the elaboration. This elaboration emphasizes why that second reason is important, why the audience should care about reclaiming lost time on social media. And I tell the audience they should care about getting that time back because, as it says here, time is the single most valuable resource known to humanity. A statement like that is a big claim. So much so that it's almost guaranteed to capture the audience's attention. Also, incorporating humor that's tailored to the audience is good as long as it isn't offensive. tread carefully. I also elaborate on a term that I mentioned earlier on, which is intentionality. This word is pretty important to my overarching reason, so I don't want to leave anything up to chance. I want to make sure the audience knows exactly what I mean when I refer to this word. So I define it in the elaboration. Also, don't forget about the effect of diction on voice, the effect of your word choice on the sort of personality that you convey to your audience. Intentional social media use can take a bunch of forms versus intentional social media use can manifest in myriad forms. In my plan, I said I wanted to convey a passionate, humorous, informative, and friendly voice. That first version is far more appropriate to create that sort of voice than this version on the screen. Next up, we had the example. This example pretty effectively engages the audience by making them participate in an activity. This also tells the marker that I'm adhering to the conventions of the form, a persuasive speech, by directly engaging with the audience, getting them to participate in certain things. Also note that the activity does have a very relevant purpose. I haven't just chucked it in there for the sake of it. Remember, everything has to advance my thesis. This example is doing that because it illustrates how much time adolescents spend on social media daily. My second reason, the reason this paragraph discusses, is that we need to reclaim lost time on social media. And here I'm saying how much time we lose. Taking a look at the explain. This explain puts that statistic at the bottom of the example into perspective by stating that 3 hours and 48 minutes per day equates to 83,000 minutes over a year, or almost 1,400 hours. Note, if you were to do something like this in an exam, don't spend time doing the actual calculations. Just make a number up or choose something easy. Like 100 minutes per day times 365 days is 36,500. Failed maths. You get the point. Then in this final sentence of the explain, we've got a rhetorical question. I think that's a pretty reasonable number, don't you? And this question implies that reducing our daily use from 3 hours and 48 minutes to 2 hours is something very achievable. After that, we have our link. This link indirectly ties back to reason 2, which is all about lost time, by implying that the audience will regain time by establishing digital boundaries. Final element in this paragraph is the transition sentence. This transition engages the audience by making them wonder, does he actually know what I've been thinking? I guess I better pay attention to what he says next to find out. Body paragraph 1 and body paragraph 2 done. Let's check out our third and final body paragraph, the counter-argument paragraph, which also includes reason 3. The theme is pathos. Here's an overview of the original version. Not as chunky as body paragraph number 2, still pretty large and in charge. And here is the deconstructed version, starting with our topic sentence. And that is, I legitimately enjoy spending that time on Insta and TikTok and don't think I need to change my relationship with either. Would you have been thinking that if you were the audience for this speech? Anyway, here is the elaboration. I completely get that. Year 11 and Year 12 are stressful. You're expected to spend 7 to 8 hours Monday to Friday learning a bunch of stuff, only to go home and spend an extra couple of hours studying that stuff. Spending time on socials is a nice way to have some downtime from all of the work. Here's the rebut element. I can't deny that logic, but I want to put one word out there: anxiety. It's a word that's thrown around more and more these days, and I know many of you know all too well what it feels like. Heck, I do. Anxiety generally refers to worrying about something that has an uncertain outcome. ATAR would be a fitting example for a few of you. The reason why I've brought up anxiety is that excessive social media use can exacerbate or worsen feelings of anxiety. From that rebut, we move to the example. When I was at school, TikTok didn't exist and Instagram was the main social media platform. At that time, there wasn't any way to hide the number of likes a post got, so there was this unspoken and sometimes spoken pressure to get lots of likes on posts. To be honest with you, I really felt this pressure. Whenever I posted a photo, I was worried about how many likes it would get. Then we go to the explain. That right there is the definition of anxiety, worrying about something with an uncertain outcome. And that's just one example. We get anxious when we see a photo of some fit person and compare ourselves to them. When we see our mates traveling Europe while we're in little old Perth, and when we see that friend of a friend get drafted drafted to the AFL. Again, I'm not saying all social media is bad, I'm simply saying that too much of a good thing is not a good thing at all. Final element is our link. So I ask you to bear this link between anxiety and social media use in mind the next time you want an escape from the stresses of high school. Remember, it all comes down to being intentional. That is our final body paragraph. Here is some comments in relation to it. We're almost done. Topic sentence was the first one. These first words, and that is, connects the transition element from the previous paragraph to the topic sentence of this paragraph. As I mentioned earlier, this counter-argument is probably something many members of the audience, you, were thinking. The fact that I have actually addressed a thought that many members of the audience probably had gives the impression that I'm a pretty fair person, I'm down to earth, and I'm not divorced from reality. Then we had the elaboration. It starts with a very short sentence, I completely get that. This is a concession. A concession is when you admit the validity of a counter-argument. Check out the LFB for a further description of that rhetorical device. Using these words, I completely get that, as a concession creates an informal and empathetic voice. Compare I completely get that with I can understand why you have such a reservation. Once again, this first option works better with the friendly voice that I've chosen to convey in my plan. The elaboration also describes how demanding Year 11 and Year 12 is, and it suggests that it's reasonable for the audience to want to relax on socials. In other words, there's an implication or a hint that the speaker, me, is on the audience's side. So that is the elaboration, this is the rebut. The first sentence of it, I can't deny that, but I want to put one word out there, anxiety, is a good example of agenda shifting. I'm not directly addressing the counter-argument that you legitimately enjoy spending time on socials. Instead, I'm shifting the agenda to a different argument. See the LFB for further info about agenda shifting. On the face of it, this makes the audience feel like I'm addressing their concern, but actually I'm ignoring it and just bringing something else up. Turning to another part of the rebut, this short sentence, heck, I do, creates an innocent, dorky, and empathetic tone. Remember, the rebut in the third body paragraph represents your reason 3. My reason 3 revolves around anxiety. Most people think they can define anxiety, but few people actually can, so providing a definition to make sure we all know what it means, we all are on the same page, was helpful in this context. This final sentence, the reason why I've brought up anxiety is that excessive social media use can exacerbate or worsen feelings of anxiety, addresses the connection between anxiety, which is really reason 3, and enjoying social media, which is the counter-argument. From that rebut, we looked at the example. In the spirit of this paragraph's theme of pathos, which involves appealing to emotions, the example is an anecdote about the speaker's feelings and emotions regarding this topic. This final part of the example, to be honest with you, I really felt this pressure, makes the speaker come across as relatable and personable. He isn't some robotic businessman, at least I hope not. He's just an average person who experiences everyday thoughts and concerns. That led us to the explain. Focusing on this middle part of the explain first. Hopefully you notice there's the repetition of the phrase when we see. The word we is an example of inclusive language. It's not us versus them, it's just us, it's we. And this part of the example is really saying we all see lots of things on socials that make our anxiety worse. Lastly, this explain finishes off with a balanced sentence. Check out the LFB. And this balanced sentence tells the audience I'm not telling them to stop using social media altogether, but just to reduce some of their overall use. Final element of this paragraph and of really this lesson is the link. This link starts off with a clear directive. I ask you to, so on. The link also reiterates what the third reason is, anxiety, and a reworded version of the counter-argument, which refers to using social media to escape from the stresses of high school. It also reminds the audience what they can do to reduce anxiety, and that is to be intentional. One final thing, this link doesn't explicitly mention the thesis, which refers to creating and implementing digital boundaries, but it doesn't need to in every single body paragraph. That's all of our content. Let's check out our simple summary. First part of the lesson, we recap recapped the structure of the body paragraphs, aka the tube of the drinking funnel. Specifically, we firstly recapped the structure of the first 2 body paragraphs, which is reason 1 and reason 2. Our mnemonic is together, everyone enjoyed edible lolly toys, and the theme is logos. The T stands for topic sentence. This is where you outline the first or second reason. The audience should agree with your overarching argument. After the T, we have the E, which is the elaborate. This provides additional detail about something mentioned in the topic sentence, or it states information that you didn't get to include in the topic sentence. From there, we have the example. This requires you to refer to an example or rhetorical device that backs up your topic sentence. After the example, we have the explain. This explains the significance of the example and how it's relevant to the topic sentence. Second last element of these first 2 body paragraphs is the link, which summarizes the body paragraph's contents and then links that to your overarching argument, your thesis. Final element is the transition. This segues to the next paragraph by hinting at what it's about. That's the structure of the first 2 body paragraphs. This is the structure of the third. It's the counter-argument and reason 3 body paragraphs. The mnemonic is the ebooks rating enjoyed everyone's love. The theme is pathos. This topic sentence requires you to outline a significant counter-argument or doubt that the audience might have regarding your main argument. After that, you should elaborate on that counter-argument's merit or merits. Once you've outlined what the counter-argument is, why it has some validity, then you can rebut it. Outline why that counter-argument is flawed or misguided, and in doing that, you can introduce your third and final reason why the audience should agree with your argument. Once you outline what your rebuttal is, you should provide an example to back that up. Don't just provide that example though, explain it. Explain its significance and how that is relevant to your topic sentence. Finally, you've got your link, which summarizes the body paragraph's contents and links that to your thesis. So once we did that recap stuff, then we looked at the body paragraphs of example number 1, focusing firstly on body paragraphs 1 and 2. Here are some key takeaways in relation to each element of these first 2 body paragraphs. Topic sentence is first up. Exaggerate the significance of your reasons to make them more convincing to the audience. I didn't just say time is important in one body paragraph. I said time is the single most valuable resource known to humanity. Taking a look at the elaboration, use humor sparingly that's tailored to the audience. For example, I said I myself have an account for just about every social media platform you can think of, except for OnlyFans. Although, nah. Also, remember the effect of diction on voice, the effect of word choice on the personality that you portray to your audience. For example, compare the following. Intentional social media use can take a bunch of forms. This creates an informal and conversational voice. Compared to intentional social media use can manifest in myriad forms. That creates a formal and more academic voice. Here are some things we discussed regarding the example element of the first 2 body paragraphs. The key to producing effective made-up evidence is making it believable. One example of that from one of the paragraphs, Dr. Uberman estimates that attention span of 3 minutes will decline to 10 seconds. Another point regarding the example, adhere to the conventions of a speech to engage the audience. Some ways you can do this is to ask the audience questions, ask them to participate in activities, and encourage them to come and say hello after the speech. All of this stuff really relates to the following point. Put yourself in the shoes of the speaker. Imagine you are the person giving the speech that you are writing in this composing section response. Here are some tips for the explain. It isn't as crucial in a persuasive text as it is in a responding section essay. Also, ensure you explain the relevance of the example to the audience. Otherwise, why should they care about the example? Then we've got the link, which should directly or indirectly tie back to the reason the link of that paragraph relates to and your thesis. Though you don't need to refer to the thesis in every body paragraph's link, at least 1 or 2 of them. Finally, for the first 2 body paragraphs, we've got the transition element. Here we said this is really an opportunity to hint at what's to come in the next body paragraph. Those were some key takeaways regarding the first 2 body paragraphs, here are some key takeaways regarding some of the unique elements of the third one. Even though the first element of the third body paragraph is also a topic sentence, don't forget that in this topic sentence, we are outlining what our counterargument is. Something we highlighted here was that compelling counterarguments are contentions that your audience is most likely thinking while you present your speech. After the topic sentence, we had the elaboration. Regarding this one, we said that you can consider using a concession to give the impression that you're on the same side as the audience. After the elaboration is the rebut. Agenda shifting is a rhetorical device, and it's a really good one to use here. You can shift the agenda from the counterargument to your reason 3. After you've done that, we've got the example. And remember that the theme of this paragraph is pathos, which involves appealing to emotions. So using anecdotes that reveal the speaker's feelings and emotions portrays the speaker as a real person who is imperfect and relatable. There weren't any real unique key takeaways regarding the explain for this body paragraph, so refer to the key takeaways for the explain of the first 2, and the same thing regarding the link. That is a wrap for this lesson, which means you've just completed the second last lesson on persuasive texts. Take the win. Obviously, the next lesson will be on conclusions, but before watching that, be sure to complete the activities for this lesson. I'm sure you'll be surprised as to what they get you to do. By now, you've probably got a good idea for how the activities in this module work, but as always, be sure to read the instructions carefully. Have some fun writing some great reasons, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep it simple.